Before we get to Congressman Derrick Van Orden taking the next step toward politicians policing your free speech, let's see where he's getting some of his ideas. For example, from the Vice President of the United States, who on Monday guest hosted Charlie Kirk's former radio show. From his government office, and the Vice President used the show to threaten to bring the resources of the United States government down on anyone who they accuse of harboring views that they consider to be worthy of infringing. All across the Trump administration, cabinet secretaries and federal department heads are spending their time and your tax dollars to identify organizations that they believe fund or support violence against conservatives. The goal, they told the New York Times, was to categorize left-wing activity that led to violence as domestic terrorism, an escalation that critics say could lay the groundwork for crushing anti-conservative dissent more broadly. Of course, this current government is without many of the men and women who had been investigating actual domestic terrorism. They've been let go or they've been reassigned to immigration duty since the White House didn't like the reality that the bulk of the work that was being done to keep America safe was to keep America safe from far-right groups. From ProPublica, they write the White House is redirecting counterterrorism personnel and funds toward a sweeping deportation campaign, claiming the southern border is the greatest domestic security threat facing the country. There have been millions in budget cuts that have gutted terrorism-related law enforcement training and shut down studies studying the frequency of attacks. It's all part of a swing in focus that started with the president's clemency for those who stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. In other words, it's the Trump White House that's asleep at the switch when it comes to protecting the country, but now that one of their own has been a victim, the focus isn't on public safety, but on partisan vengeance. One of Trump's cabinet secretaries, Sean Duffy, is relishing this chance to play Big Brother. I mean the government form of Big Brother, not the reality series Big Brother, but he probably wishes he could have. Duffy, of course, was on Road Rules, which is why Donald Trump thought he was qualified to be the United States Secretary of Transportation. Anyway, Duffy not only celebrated recent discipline against pilots who used their free speech to comment on the Charlie Kirk murder, he made the big government leap to equating bad thoughts with bad performance, saying of the airlines, quote, any company responsible for the safety of the traveling public cannot tolerate that behavior. That behavior, of course, again, being free speech. But in their mind, having a contrary opinion makes you dangerous at your job. But of course, that's how Duffy got his job in the first place. Recall what Trump said in nominating Duffy, that he was going to, quote, make our skies safe again by eliminating DEI for pilots and air traffic controllers. In other words, if any women or Black Americans were pilots or air traffic controllers in Trump's view, they were less qualified. Now, where have I heard that before? Oh, yeah, Charlie Kirk, January 23rd, 2024, quote, if I see a Black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. So if having the wrong skin color makes you a dangerous pilot in the minds of Donald Trump and his cabinet, why wouldn't having political opinions you don't like also make you dangerous? That's some big government stuff right there, and that takes us back to Congressman Van Orden. It's one thing to tweet about using the government to harass or penalize someone for their thoughts and opinions. It's another to introduce a bill to actually do that. You know who introduced a bill to do that on Monday? Derrick Van Orden. His office announced a new bill that would prohibit federal funds from going to entities employing those who condone and celebrate political violence and domestic terrorism. And if that sounds okay to you, let me ask you this. Whose job is it to determine if someone is, quote, condoning political violence, and who gets to decide what crosses the line into political violence? After all, we've lost track of the number of times Derrick Van Orden, a member of Congress, has referred to Democrats as, quote, domestic terrorists. Would he introduce that kind of a bill today if Democrats were the ones in charge? I mean, think back to the days of Senator Barack Obama, Senator Hillary Clinton, Senator Ted Kennedy. If back then any of them said they wanted this kind of law, Republicans would be talking about burning down the Capitol and lashing out at so-called thought police. But of course, we know they've already done a dress rehearsal for burning down the Capitol, and now they're the ones who want the thought police enshrined into law. With any luck, this whole episode eventually simmers down. At the moment, we hope it's just emotional flailing from emotional men like Van Orden and Duffy and Vance and Trump. Their feelings get hurt so easily and they lash out so hard. And it's understandable to be hurt when someone close to you is murdered. Ask any parent who's lost a child in a school shooting as they watch politicians do nothing about the real world. So let's get back to the real world and what Van Orden and others should be working on. 1, we are closing in on the possibility of a government shutdown. 2, we are closing in on a date when a bunch of Americans are going to see their health insurance premiums skyrocket if the Affordable Care Act supports aren't renewed. 3, we're about to see farmers in a world of hurt because the crops are going to come in and there's no place to put everything that China isn't buying. Grocery prices are still out of hand. The job market is getting softer. And the people who promised to focus like a laser on making things affordable are busy reading your social media posts and deciding if you should be punished. Do not let them intimidate or silence you. You are allowed to have opinions. You have that freedom. Don't take that away from yourself. That's what Derrick Van Orden and J.D. Vance and others actually want. They want the intimidation and self-censorship. Don't let it happen to you, because it sure as hell ain't happening over here. Today's history lesson after this. You're up north.